Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Bite of Education with Paul and Jamie. No Tom today. We are going to be looking into Ofsted's review of of computing in education. So, having a natter. I'm going to just thank our sponsors, Ecta, for sponsoring and paying for some of the tech that we use. So go check it out. Right, let me just unmute these guys. Hey, Paul. Hey, Jamie.
Hello.
Are we both all right?
Yeah, all good.
Yeah.
Paul with his Leicester City tracksuit on.
Wrong side.
Yeah, that is schoolboy era.
Yeah, schoolboy era.
He's tired. We'll let him off.
Yeah, we will let him off.
I've just done an hour and a half's football.
Fair enough. Right, so I sent you the Ofsted's computing review, and you both had a look for it, which was good. And I thought, let's just have a chat about it and see what we think and what we can take from it. So let me just bring this page up. There we go. This is a watered down version by, let me find the chap so I can make sure he gets credit. Mark Hayes. You can see at the bottom of this page his Twitter handle and his website. I just thought it'd be a good reference tool for us to be able to have a look at what's going on. So, both of you have read it. What's your take on it?
I think the thing that strikes me about it most is how Ofsted are bringing computing to the forefront of education, and they're seeing it as a stepping stone into employment, and really realising the importance of it in everyday life. So it's got to be part of the national curriculum rather than it being a side shoot, or not even done in some schools.
Cool. Jamie?
Yeah, I think it is really interesting. I mean, me and you have spoken before, James, about the importance of good quality computing education in a school and the impact it can have across the curriculum. But I think it's really interesting that Ofsted are obviously looking into these foundation subjects and starting to really think about the impact they can have on the wider curriculum. And it looks like, as Paul said, that computing is being brought more into the forefront. It's being brought in, and it's being looked at, and it's really starting to look like computing is going to become more and more important and more under scrutiny. So I think it's important that we look through this and we look through what Ofsted is saying, and maybe just clarify a few things for the people that may be a bit scary, because when people do release these massive reports, there can be a bit like, oh my goodness, all of this information, what does it mean? So yeah, I think it's really exciting that computing is becoming more important, and but at the same time, I think it's important that we look through it and we really have a good conversation about what they're actually asking us to do.
Cool. Well, let's have a quick look through Mr. Hayes' document here, and if we look through here again, it's going down. If I can pick out some key parts of this document, and it goes to teacher subject knowledge in primary. Again, there's parts here where it's qualified computer specialists. Kind of gender doesn't come into it, but this points out that this, I definitely think this bit here points out that there's a big push for STEM and equality in the STEM subjects, and that's because even though girls are outperform boys in computing in the primary and secondary schools, there's a lower number that goes out to do the job. So we'll have a chat about that. Workforce, again, it goes about knowledge. So we're looking here the importance of CPD for teachers, progression, types of knowledge, computer science, computational thinking, information technology. This one for me is probably the biggest one, digital literacy. But let's have a little chat about that. Programming. I think programming is the one that scares everybody, but it's probably the easiest to implement.
Yeah.
And yeah, let's go for it. Let me just make sure there's a good one here, which is a good start for people if they are struggling, which is unplugged. And then we go to the bottom and infrastructure. So these are the key ones. So if we can keep those in mind, guys. And like I said, I just want to make sure Mr. Mark Hayes gets his credit. So markhayes.com and at Mark Hayes for his Twitter handle. So let me just remove that. Okay. So now I'll be remembering which order we were going to talk about these things. So, like I said, one of the big things for me was the digital literacy, because that is the one that if you aren't digitally literate, or you don't have which end of the computer to use to start with, you can't move on to the other things. So that seems to be where I've found the problems when I've been working with education across the board. I mean, what do you think out of all those? Are those the bits that you were looking at?
Teacher knowledge leads to teacher confidence. And without that knowledge, that basic knowledge base, that digital literacy, teachers can't move forward, but they've got to want to learn the digital literacy. And they've got the barriers need breaking down. So the big words that they're not familiar, teachers are not familiar with. I've seen this firsthand. It's almost like the wall comes up. They can't move beyond that. So if we can break down the individual words to make it more user friendly, rather than it being tech talk.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not. I don't work in education, as a teacher. I don't teach. But then it's no different to education. You guys in education change acronyms all the time. NQT is now ECT because you added a year. So it's like early career teacher. We wouldn't know what you were talking about with ECT. I thought it was something to do with your heart. So like, we have to keep abreast of your things. But the way that I find that out, I mean, apart from being married to a teacher, is asking questions and talking to people, and then you guys break it down for me. So I go, oh yeah, well that makes sense. It was a 1 year. It was a 1 year role. Now it's a 2 year. So early career teacher makes more sense because it's spread over 24 instead of 12 months. So that is fine. And I think the problem I think that you guys in education have is that you're in a time poor profession. Breaking down those barriers is all well and good, but when you've got deadlines and red tape and reports and phone calls and that you have to deal with, the big ones, then
without a doubt,
you're constantly preparing for that. My wife, she's leadership now, but I remember when she was teaching all week, she'd come back absolutely spent. So she still comes back spent, to be honest, as a
that doesn't.
Yeah, that doesn't change.
I can live that one.
But then I think it's probably unrealistic to go, okay, right, cool. Can you learn this part of digital literacy? Can you learn this new skill? And even though that new skill will actually make their lives easier and streamline those working processes, if it's not something you get or you're really interested in, then it's a war of attrition, isn't it? Between learning it and then getting some of that time back.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know about you, Paul, but in mainstream education, from what I've seen over the past couple of years, is that everything that we do with the kids, it's all about making them love what they learn. And if we can't, as adults and as teachers, love what obviously we have to spend time to learn these things. And I think my main priority, I know you spoke about digital literacy and the importance of it, but I think my main priority, I think from what I've read about this document, is the knowledge. If you haven't got the knowledge of the digital literacy skills, if you haven't got knowledge of computer science, if you haven't got knowledge of like basic level computer science, I don't mean taking apart of computers and reprogramming the motherboard and all of that. It's basic knowledge of what a computer is, what are the different parts, what is a speaker, what is a microphone, is it an input device, is it an output device? Simple things that to the outside people will think, well, that's easy. It's a microphone. But when you're a teacher, it's a lot more complicated than that. You can't just say to a child, "Oh, it's a microphone." That's it. There we go. Lesson's done. There we go. We've ticked off devices. Brilliant. I don't think quite often people realise how much teachers have to learn, and as you say, how little time they have to actually spend and think. Okay, well, it is a microphone. I could tell you it's a microphone, but the kids are going to need a bit more than that for a 45-minute lesson. And it is a big ask. It's a big ask.
I think this is where CPD has to come in.
Yeah.
We have infinite amounts of CPD. All of it relevant? Definitely not.
No.
And if you can cut out some of that CPD that is almost archaic, some of it now, and start putting in CPD around IT and the importance of it in schools, you start to build teacher confidence up. And it's the same with anything, isn't it? The more you use it, the more confident you get. If you do something once every 3 or 4 months, you've forgotten it by the time you come around to do it again. And until computing becomes a standard across schools, particularly in primary schools, and you've got decent people leading it that will pull people along with them, we're always going to have a problem.
Yeah, and I would be interested to see what the overall idea across schools in the UK is. So I know that in my setting, I teach the subject as a subject specialist and teach year 1 to year 6. I do that explicitly. That is me going to the classrooms, teaching the lessons, having the knowledge, having the subject knowledge. But then other schools, your average primary school teacher who's just come out of their training is teaching computer programming, digital literacy, with probably very little subject knowledge. And the difference between different schools and different ideas of what the curriculum should look like, what the important parts of the curriculum are. And I think there's a massive, I don't know if you two agree with this, but I think there's a massive spectrum on what schools are delivering as their computing curriculum.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
I would say you've got NQTs coming out or ECTs.
Even teachers have been teaching for 20 years. It's.
But what I mean is, I think you have early career teachers. See, I'm starting getting there. They're coming out, and I think they're finding certain parts of using the digital literacy elements easier. I mean, I tend to, whenever I go to a school and I have no champion, I'm looking at the ECTs. I'm just not going to get used to it straight away.
You can't get your head around that, can you?
No, I'm looking at the early teachers. I'm looking at the teachers that in their first or second year of delivery. I know that in year 1 you can't have a specialism, can you? I don't know. Can you in year 2 with the ECT?
You can take on a subject, obviously under the supervision of your ECT mentor, who would support you along with that. But even in year 2, I mean, leading a subject or even teaching all of these subjects, primary school teachers have to know so much and have so little time to really get their head around it. Every single primary school teacher is an absolute powerhouse being able to turn up and teach like everything from how to tie your shoelaces to how an egg hatches in science. It's massive. But yeah, I think that's one of the main things that I think probably people, when they read this document, will be scared of, is it's just one more thing that they have to do in their very short amount of time that they have in the classroom.
But it's so important to reduce workload.
Yeah.
Because
you see, that's where I get enthusiastic. That's where I like brilliant, because I see the major opportunities there for cross-curricular streamlining of their workloads. I think from a third-party perspective, I think the thing that I find hard is nailing people down with time, because, as we've already stated, it's a time-poor profession. So I kind of some of the schools that I have worked with in the past have gone, right, great, and we're interested in that, you do it, and it doesn't work that way. It has to be a partnership. So that's why it works really well with the ECTs. Yes, I just naturally did that one. ECTs just boom. You see that? Notice?
James.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, we all saw the concentration in your on your eyes. Don't act as if it was intentional. You're going.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've written it down now. It's on the wall behind me. Right. So just like in our job, IT's moving on, and I'm sure we'll get to it at some point, where it's no longer a big dirty server in the cupboard.
Let me give you an example of what's happened this week. For those that don't know, I work in a behaviour school. All our children have been excluded from mainstream schools, and we've had a clash of personalities in my class, a major clash of personalities, that was really interfering with all the children's learning in my class. So I went to see the head on Monday and said I'd got an idea where we could use Google Classroom as a bit of a way of separating the children, these two particular children, but they don't miss out on their education. And I brought this up in team brief first thing in the morning, and looking around the room, you could see people going, God, he mentioned Google Classroom, it's, but I tried it. And I did some blended learning. So I'm teaching in class, got the headset on. I've got one child out there taking it in turns, an hour out at a time. And it's been brilliant this week. It just worked because they're not clashing because they're not in the same room, but they're still receiving their education. And that's something now that we're looking at bringing in the school because of the nature of the beast, if you like. It was such a success this week, just a simple thing, like just using that new technology that we used in lockdown without even thinking about. And it's a drift.
But that's where that document says the core subject knowledge and technical knowledge. The technology. So that allowed you're solid in that understanding of the technologies. That allowed you to not even have to worry about that. So you can start thinking about how to use that innovatively. And that's where I really want to, that's what I want to try and work with schools in, breaking down those silos of knowledge. And we, like I was saying before, that we have it now. Our technology is moving on, and we've got technicians who have, an old way of looking at things. And if something breaks, they replace it with the same, or it goes, the server goes, and you buy a new server and you just move the internal bits, like all the content to a new server, and you continue. But it's old hat now. So, and that's because, again, ours is a time poor profession. I'm sure you've all experienced it. An IT guy walks in and it's like, there's more problems than he can get done in a day. But the point is, I want to work with, again, the guys that the rest of my team, the schools that we work with, and start breaking down those silos of knowledge and finding a streamlined way of delivering that content. So whenever I do training, I try and do a passive resource after the training. So the staff can go, like a website, staff can go back to that as and when they need it. So Jamie's doing it with with the Google Sites. So if you can get the school creating and sharing that knowledge base that can be gone and selected as and when needed, that's how you can start breaking down those silos of knowledge for not just IT, not just computing, but surely any subject. And I know, Jamie, you're starting to work and develop that now. I mean, that's part of the roadmap that you and I will be discussing hopefully later this next term.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've definitely been in a kind of an area of transition at our setting at the moment. We've gone from having very little IT infrastructure, very old resources that weren't really fit for purpose, not really having a targeted computing curriculum or a computing curriculum that was really being delivered to a high standard across the school. Not necessarily for any fault of anybody's own. I mean, computing is a difficult subject to, unless you really actually enjoy it, to be passionate about and to go and campaign and stand at the front of staff meetings and talk until you're blue in the face. But one of the things I've been doing, which kind of links into what this document's been saying about teacher CPD and teacher knowledge and stuff like that, I've set the teachers at my setting a bit of a challenge over the past couple of weeks, over the past month. I did a staff meeting about computing and technology in school, and just spoke through some people voice that I've been doing, spoke through the teachers what I'd been doing, because as I teach the computing lessons, there's obviously that risk of de-skilling the teachers that are in school. But I've set them a challenge to use technology in a different curriculum subject that they wouldn't usually use it to. And some of the tweets and the things that the teachers have been showing me have been bordering on miraculous. Like, I walked into a year 4 classroom, I think it was last week, and there's a child sitting there with his iPad, with the teacher's iPad in front of him, and the teacher's has left on the dictate button while she's been teaching. It's recorded what she's been saying, and then he's using the talkback feature on Google Translate, which isn't always the most accurate resource. But he's using the talkback feature and listening to it in Romanian and knowing exactly what he needed to do. And I mean, a simple thing like that and the simple use of technology is amazing. And I think that's, as James said, I think that's what we're kind of doing at my school at the moment, is trying to think about how we can use technology to bridge the gap, to start looking at those pillars of progression, as they say in this document, how we can progress children on, and how we can, but again, the foundations are teacher knowledge, teacher CPD, and subject knowledge. Without those three things, you're not really getting anywhere, I would say.
Perhaps with this document, perhaps on our podcasts, we can start looking at different sections in perhaps a bit more detail.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
To sort of help break down those barriers a little bit, rather than we're giving it a pretty good overview tonight, but we're not looking at specifics. And if we are looking at, say, teacher CPD, all right, teachers need to go and get some CPD. Where do they go? What's the good CPD? What's the bad CPD? Because there's a lot of variation on the internet.
There's a lot of CPD out there, and especially for IT, because there would be. I mean, IT CPD is available on any platform because of the nature of the subject. There's so much of it. But going and sitting for a 6-hour course on how to deliver programming in your setting probably isn't a good use of your time.
No, or a good starting point.
Yeah, or a good starting point. Exactly. I mean, maybe a training on simply like what other people have been using. I know that I went to a ECTA run, almost like workshop, and listen to other people talk about what they've been doing in their schools to do with Google and the Google education tools, which led me on to go and do my Google Educator and started really getting into using those tools. And as a result of that, my subject confidence in the ability to deliver things using those tools has meant that my children and my classes that I teach have reaped the benefit of that.
Yeah, and I think you did the Google Educator. When James mentioned it to me and I tried it, I was actually surprised at the amount of knowledge I had actually already got.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think that took me about, oh yeah, I actually know all this already, or bits of it, or enough of it to be a platform to help put me through the Google Educator course. And I think some people are going to have more knowledge than they actually think they've got.
Well, we use technology all the time, don't we? I mean, I bet every single one of us turns off some form of AI in our house at some point in the day. Most of us have an Alexa or a Google Home or something.
Also,
your phone, your Siri, something like that. You tell it to in the morning. You tell it to shut up. Siri, turn off the alarm. But we're all using technology, and I think Paul, what you said is really important. I think breaking it down, looking at it in explicit detail. This is what they're actually saying. This is what they mean. And these are the kind of things that you could go and look at, because I know that when I started out, I was so thankful that ECTA were kind of working in the schools. I was thinking, where do I start? Because there's so much. But yeah,
and I think we were the same. Particularly as we went into lockdown, we'd got ECTA there, helped us introduce all the Chromebooks, get us up and running with Google Classroom, and we went from nothing to 100 overnight. And that's including the teachers that really weren't confident with Google Classroom. We went to delivering classes twice a day, every day, in no time at all. So it can be done.
I'm just looking back, because I know you just mentioned Chromebooks. I'm just looking back at the document, because there was something about infrastructure, and I think it's really important to maybe mention Chromebooks, because I think they've kind of flew on the radar for a bit for the past couple of years, and they've been around, they've been available, but I think Chromebooks are becoming more and more the kind of the laptop of choice for education.
Yeah. And I think the government have said, haven't they? We've given you all these Chromebooks, we've given you all this infrastructure. Get using it, basically.
Yes.
Oh yeah, that is definitely the case. Jamie, you just said something that actually let me bring this up, because slideshow. There was a quote that I saw from a chap at Princeton, and let me just go share. And I shared it on stop screen, share screen, and choose a Chrome tab. And it was this quote. And you said that we all turn on a device or turn off a device at some point during the day. We all use a phone. We all use AI or technology all through the day. But it's a case of society is increasingly using technology, but decreasingly capable of making or even using them effectively. Mm. And I thought it was a really good quote. So I did that in a presentation that I did to a school, and it didn't go down particularly great. But it was about digital literacy, about using it. One of the things that I try and get through to schools and talk to schools, and we try and see our schools that we work with as a partnership, because it can't just be, we can't deliver all your equipment and get it used and perfect. It has to be a two-way street. So we also look at supporting schools from a different angle. So your infrastructure, and that's part of the document there, is making your infrastructure right, and as well at the other end, educating staff on how to use it. And the idea is you meet in the middle, and then you have equipment that works and staff understands. There's nothing worse than your equipment not working and you lose that trust. So I'm sure, Jamie, when you're if you ever do any in-house training, and the same with you, Paul, when something goes wrong, it's two steps backward. So it's making sure that stuff's solid. And that's why Chromebooks have been really good, because it's such a light operating system. They're quick. They stay quick.
I think the amazing thing about Chromebooks as well is that you can basically turn any computer, no matter how old or how basically falling apart, you can turn it into a Chromebook. Like if you've got a cupboard with some old Toshiba laptops that are about 20 years old, you can basically download Chrome OS onto them and they turn into Chromebooks and they work probably for another 20 years.
20 years might be a stretch, but yeah,
well, exaggeration and all that. But I know that we've got some computers in school that were completely and utterly useless. They were past their usability as Windows PCs and have been turned into Chromebooks and have been given a new lease of life.
That was the Cloud Ready software. So, which interestingly, Cloud Ready, I think I'm pretty sure I'm right, has now been bought by Google. Because that used to work on the Chromium browser, and Google have procured Cloud Ready and are developing their own now. So what you'll be able to do on your Chrome browser, anybody will be able to do, is go get the recovery extension, go to back up your Chrome, and then you can choose the beta version, which is currently being developed. I tried to put it on a Mac the other day, and that did not like it. But it worked. It worked for about 10 minutes, but then I put it on an old HP, absolutely fine. So it's a case that there's loads out there. There's so much you can do, but it's knowing what to do. Jamie, when you were talking about your talking about the teachers doing stuff. And impressing you on some of the things that they've done. What's the scope for you sitting in with some of their? I don't know. This is a question, by the way, so I'm not. You sitting in with some of their planning, yeah, but sitting in on some of their planning and seeing whether you can, make suggestions about using tech to perhaps save them time. I'm not trying to give you extra work or making a practical suggestion in your school, but I just wondered what your take would be on the IT specialist that's there every day being able to come in and help streamline that as a peer point of view.
Well, I think that's kind of the way I've tried to target, trying to encourage the teachers and the members of staff in school to use technology, is that it makes your life easier. Obviously, when you say things like that to teachers, you have to back it up. Because you can go into a staff meeting, all guns blazing, going, "Oh yeah, I use all these amazing things, but they're incredibly difficult to use, and none of you can use them." But yeah. I think it hasn't been easy. And I think what you've said, James, is really interesting about having a champion in school is really important. But without that, you do face the uphill battle of trying to work out how you're going to bring all these systems into a school where everybody's kind of happy with how they do things as they are. I will say that I'm set in my ways at times.
Yeah, but it comes back to that phrase, doesn't it? Oh, we've never done it like that before.
Yeah, and I think what I've tried to do is you don't want to give them too much information at once. I think that's incredibly important. You just introduce one or two things every couple of months, and you say, "Look at this amazing thing."
That's a winner, though. That is a practical solution to a pain point that they've got.
Well, for example, I had teachers complaining about, I don't know what the kids are doing on the Chromebooks. Such and such is telling me that such and such did this. I'm having kids coming up to me on the playground and telling me that such and such is logging into their Timetables Rockstars account, and I've got 30 children in the classroom. I can't get around them all and check if they're all on their own account. And so I spoke to my senior leadership team. I spoke to the guys at Ecta, and we introduced a piece of software called Senso, which is a digital cloud management system where you're able to view what the children are doing on their screens. And then once I'd got that sorted, once I was confident using it myself, I then showed it to the staff at the staff meeting, logged onto a couple of Chromebooks, got them to mess around with the Chromebooks, and then just brought up this screen with their screens on them. And all the teachers are a bit like, "Oh, hang on a minute, that's what I'm doing." And I think things like that, and then the practical applications, and then saying, right, so this is an amazing tool. All you have to do is open your Chrome browser before your lesson starts, log in with Google, click on your class, and just leave it. And then if you want to just check, if you think, Bobby at the back seems to be doing something he shouldn't be, let me have a look on the Senso, and you can see exactly what's on his screen. Amazing resource. And the teachers are all going, wow. And obviously SLT DSLs are happy as well because of the safeguarding side of things that's intertwined with that as well.
Can I chuck a wow in on there as well? I love that, James.
It's an amazing piece of software. I mean, Ben's another guy that works at Ecta. He's done some loads of work in the back end, linking it up with the safeguarding software that we use, CPOMs. I'm sure that most schools know what that is. But Senso sends notifications to CPOMs if a child types in something on their Chromebook that is flagged under our policies, and it sends
about this before.
Briefly, and it sends it directly to CPOMs, and then it logs it, and the DSLs are alerted. Like in terms of safeguarding, and we're always talking about safeguarding training. We have to do it every year, and the safeguarding training is always saying report as soon as possible. Like in terms of making our life easier, there's a piece of software out there available to teachers that's doing it for you. In terms of technology and children being safe online, it's monitoring it. It's safeguarding children. And all you have to do is set it up with your IT technician, and it's doing a massive job.
And that would be a massively easy one for me to sell, because CPOMs in our role, with obviously a lot of safeguarding issues and a lot of issues generally, we spend hours a week putting on CPOMs stuff. So anything.
Okay. I definitely think that's something we can put in there, Paul. I know that you have something else, but without getting too specific for school, one of the big benefits that I think you two have got is you've got leadership teams that buy into it and see the importance of it. I know that there are certain geographical or physical things that are impacting. We're waiting for something to happen, Paul, with a couple of your things without going into too much detail, which has been happening since I've been at the school, or waiting to happen since I've been at the school.
And since I've been there.
Okay, fine. So you are limited by connectivity speeds of where you are. But the big benefit that you both have is that your leadership team have made investments on it, have seen that the fact that if we get the infrastructure right, and then we can start looking from the other end, start importing those together. One of what's worked really well with Jamie's school is we had a meeting, we sat down, and we put a roadmap in place, and that roadmap is targets of where we want to be, and that's we are having that meeting at some point, Paul.
Yeah, we need it.
So and it'll be a case of like, okay, we're here. We've made strides. Things are a lot further on than they were. But how do we get to step 2, step 3, step 4? And
what are steps 2, 3?
Exactly. 4? Yeah. But that can't just come from me or an IT point of view. It's a case of what you want to achieve. Like, what do you practically want to deliver to your children? How do you want your staff to work? And that comes from just a conversation and finding out what your pain points are, what causes problems at the moment. And then you have that conversation, you see what parts of technology can help. One of the things I love to do is go into a school that I've never been to before, and the focus is always on the teaching staff, and you go, that makes sense. That's your business. Your business is delivering education to children, and administration tends to get overlooked. And you go and spend 10, 15 minutes with the admin team in the office, who a lot of places are the heartbeat of a school, and you sit down and find out where their problems are. And they are as time poor. If anybody who knows education knows what how many times a phone rings in the office and those 9 o'clock morning rushes. If we can sort of help streamline some of those processes, not saying you don't need to spend any money, it could just be a case of tweaks or using some of the applications that in a different way, or the fact that they might have 3 applications or 3 programs or 3 services where they've already got one service that does all 3 of those parts. But without sitting down and having that conversation, it's a case of having too many different things for everybody to know. And that's where the Google interface comes in really well. Or if you're using the Microsoft interface, trying to keep it streamlined and making sure you make the most out of all those parts that learning platform or technology provides, rather than going, I'll use Google infrastructures to do this, but if I'm going to do a presentation, I'll use PowerPoint, and then if I'm going to do this, I'll use this. And you need to know all these different bits. But if you go, hold on, well, this one platform or this one tool does 6 or 7 different things. As long as you know that inside and out, surely it's going to save you time.
It has to, but it's getting that message over.
Yeah, and I think a massive part of teaching, I'm sure Paul will agree with this, is as part of a teacher's job, you have to identify the misconceptions early. You have to be ready to, okay, already I can see that you don't understand. And I think bringing in things to schools and talking about all of this is incredibly important. But also, I think people will read this document and think that Ofsted are basically saying you need to do more of this, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. But actually what they're really saying is you've started doing this, but the importance of it just needs to be elevated. Digital literacy, in reality, should, in my opinion, other people may disagree, digital literacy should become, in the next couple of years, part of your standard practice teaching English. Because it is a skill. It's something that needs to be taught, not necessarily just in a computing lesson, because digital literacy skills, being able to pick up a computer, make a Word document, make a table, little things like that, that your computing lesson in your 45 minutes on a Tuesday afternoon, when they've just done PE, they're all sweaty, they're all tired, and don't really want to listen to you about how to put something in bold, probably isn't the best time to be telling them those things. But if you're constantly exposing them to these skills, like you're asking the children to, in an English lesson or a history lesson or a geography lesson, to use the Chromebook to make a report about their research, to use sources on Google Classroom that have been attached to an assignment, and they're reading history sources, and they're using a Google extension from the Chrome store called Napta that's allowing them to actually pull off the text off these images and putting quotes into a research bank on a document, and little skills like that us as professionals all do already. Like every single teacher in the world, well, in the UK definitely, I can guarantee will at some point be using a spreadsheet to input their data. Like little skills like that, putting numbers in a table and working out the percentages. We all do it as a matter of habit. But then children, what's a spreadsheet? What's the point? Why? Why do I need to know what a spreadsheet is? I'm 6 years old. Why are you talking to me about spreadsheets? I've only just learned how to unwrap a baby bell. But I think I know I'm probably being a bit well, I don't know, but I think it's important to identify the misconceptions early for both the children that we're teaching, but also the staff we're supporting to deliver these things. Because Ofsted come into your school and they look at things, and they look at knowledge, and they look at all of that. But from what I understand from this article, the main thing that they're looking at is knowledge, application of knowledge, and the skills that are being used to support the acquisition of knowledge. Yeah, I feel like I'm waffling now.
No, you said a lot there, and I think one of the elements that was on there as well was computational thinking. If you take computational thinking and you look at one of the other parts, which is unplugged activities, unplugged activities and computational thinking can be incorporated into anything, whether or not it's working in geography and using Google Maps, or working or doing history and doing chronological timelines, or making a cake and coming up with a recipe. It's about understanding, linking those computational thinking or unplugged activities, putting those together and adding those to your everyday learning. That's where I think those champions in schools, if we can kind of find a way where we can harness those practical ideas that you have and make them as a resource that you can go and select. Some people can go and select. And I'm not talking about a lesson plan, because that's off the peg, follow a recipe teaching method. I'm talking about some knowledge that they can go and grasp and then absorb and have that knowledge themselves.
But I think, like Jamie said, it's got to be drip fed.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that you can't go in with a look what we've got, and we've got this huge amount of, because between the three of us on tonight, we've got a huge amount of knowledge, but we can't just throw that at people. It needs to be drip fed in so that they can build on it. The bit that we introduce first can then be built onto the next bit, and it goes up and up. And I think that's the essential way forward, certainly in our setting, without a doubt.
So we're talking about drip feeding that information.
Yeah.
So that information builds up and up and up. Sounds very much like scaffolding to me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a massive part of education, isn't it? Scaffolding, and I mean, I just before we move away from those unplugged activities, I think unplugged activities are a massive part of computing. Like being able to actually pull it apart and look without really using a computer and look at things. Because I know that when I learn things, I don't necessarily go and do it on a computer. I might read an article, or I look at something, or I hear it by word of mouth talking to a colleague, and you just think when you're developing your curriculum and when you're looking at your curriculum planning, which is what everybody's kind of doing at this time of year. It's that time of year where you look back over the year, you look at what you've done, and you think, right, next year, what do I need to change? What do I need to add? And you're looking at these articles that are coming out from Ofsted and the government and the people who know what they're talking about, not necessarily me. And you read up and you think, oh, that school's doing that. That sounds interesting. I've heard about such and such referral unit using a 3D printer. Oh, that sounds interesting. Because I know, for example, I got an email from my head this week because I'd posted on Twitter about Tinkercad, another amazing resource. Paul spoke about it last week, and he sent me an email from his he's in a group with lots of other heads from around our area, and they've done a presentation about Tinkercad and using a 3D printer. And obviously, I sent a rather joking email in return to him saying, "Oh well, I'll be adding a 3D printer to my curriculum bid. I hope that's not too expensive." And of course, that was shot down rather quickly. But I think it is incredibly important that it is little steps. Like with children, you don't just go, right, computer programming textbook, bang. You got 3 weeks, and then we'll do a test. You go. You get them in a circle, and you get them blindfolded, and you get them to direct each other walking around the circle without bumping into each other, because it's fun, it's interactive, it's nothing to do with a computer, but it's getting that. And I think what Paul said earlier was really, really, really stuck with me. I was just thinking about it. It's the basic knowledge, just basic level. Like what is code? It's an instruction, and that's very basic. But I think it's incredibly important. I'm waffling again. I'm conscious. I don't know. I just get started and off I go.
No, but so you absolutely right. I mean, one of the things you just said there was getting started. Yeah, Paul mentioned it. You mentioned it. It was part of the conversation we had when we were talking about code.org. Where do you begin? It's part of the conversation when you look at CPD and resource. You said there's so much out there. Where do you begin? Because there's so much. It's a case of wood from the tree. So where possible, when I work with schools, and coding I always find so easy to start implementing in schools just because it's binary. It's just working through. Computational thinking is kind of more theoretical and getting people's heads around it, and breaking it down from it's the way that you think and the way that the computer thinks and the way that building that link between the two. So if you can find multiple, and this is why I aim at ECTs, right? Because I can drop different parts of knowledge onto different people, and then those within school network. So it's not always the case. There's not always that many people around, and that's why one of the things we are going to be doing. It's COVID has put paid to it for the last couple of years, but my company is going to do in Leicester a networking event once or twice a year. We're going to put on some workshops, so basically some computers that will be logged with Windows environment and Chrome environment. Put on some food, but basically have it just at the place where like-minded technologists will be able to come in and chat and share some ideas. And I think that's going to be the key, is the networking, making sure that you get around.
Yeah.
And I know I came to a training with, I think both of you spoke at it, that Google systems in school. And I think that is probably the best training I've been on. I didn't really learn anything, but actually listening to what other people are doing and the networking side of things was massively beneficial, because it led me on to thinking, oh, that school's using Google Classroom. Why didn't I think of that? I used it in lockdown. It's easy. And things like that. And networking, I think, is a massive part, and it's a massive part of technology as well.
Yeah.
Well, it's 52 minutes, so we beat the 47 from last time. I think, hopefully one of these weeks we're going to get somebody ask a particular question. So, but I know we're in the infancy of this thing. But what I did want to say is CPD and knowing that where to start and what good CPD out there. Maybe one of the things that we could do is if somebody actually wants to learn something from root and branch and get them started, like using Google Sites or code.org or a way of delivering e-safety within education, we could do a CPD session here. So ask away, guys. So but I realised that these two probably want to get to bed because they both work in education. They've got no time and they're probably about to fall asleep.
And we don't have an easy life like you do, James.
Yeah, no. Part-timer.
We actually do have to work for a living.
Didn't you spend the past 6 weeks at home or something? Because you
did, didn't he? Yeah,
sitting around. Yeah.
Was it 10 weeks?
Oh, 10 weeks. Oh, sorry, 10 weeks you had at home.
Yes, a snapped Achilles would do that to you.
Whatever.
Yeah.
You have an automatic. You only need 1 foot.
Yeah,
but it was the wrong foot.
It
was the wrong foot. If it was my right foot, the Achilles are snapped. If it was the left,
how convenient.
Yeah, very convenient, April.
Convenient.
Typical Villa excuses. Oh, it was the left foot. Oh, it's the right foot.
Yeah. Till he got home.
All right then. Right. On that note, thank you both. let's have a think about what we can talk about next week, unless somebody does leave a
I'm
comment.
not around next week. I'm on a narrowboat. No, I'm on a narrowboat all week.
Well, I think this has come up with lots of possibles to talk about and lots of things we can look at in more detail. So I don't think we're going to be stuck for anything.
Yeah.
Well, Jamie wanted to demo something. You wanted to demo something this week anyway, didn't you? So was it Google Sites or something like that?
Just the uses of Google Classroom in the wider curriculum. Like, I know that people think computing Google Classroom great, but what virtual classrooms, what resources are out there, and what you can use Google Classroom for.
Yeah, and I can also chip in on that because I'm using it now, Google Classroom, for phonics, all sorts of things now. I've extended it within our school a lot. Yeah,
because I mean, I know you briefly mentioned it today, James, about code.org, but there's so many pieces of software out there that have Google Classroom interconnectivity, code.org, BandLab, loads of things. So yeah, there's loads of things out there that I think that could be a really good session to kind of open people's eyes to what's available to them, all on one resource.
You can start that, Jamie, can't you? And then I can chuck mine in the next time I'm on.
Yeah,
okay,
that sounds good to me.
Absolutely right. So thank you both. Just say thank you to our sponsors again, Ecta, for supporting the channel, and I would just like to wish you all a very good morning, evening, or afternoon, depending on the rest of the week. And hopefully we'll see you next week. All right, see you both.